Hi! Welcome to this part of my guide and review featuring the FlexTale Solo Adventuring Toolkit. If you haven't seen the other parts of this guide and review, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about quests and clue targets and finding clues. As always, I am going to be reading some key paragraphs and I'm going to give you my opinion on those paragraphs. So, quests and clue targets. Any quest generated by this book that involves a clue-driven conclusion will also have a clue target. This represents how complex the quest is and how many pieces of information are necessary to guarantee that you'll be able to unravel the mystery, or formally in the terms of this book, arrive at a conclusion. A clue target might be 1, 4, 10, or even higher for a given quest. So those quests that only require one clue are obviously going to be shorter and perhaps easier when compared to quests that require 4 or 10 clues to complete or to arrive at a conclusion. Once you have at least one clue against a quest with a clue target, at any time in pursuing that quest, you may attempt to analyze the information you've gathered and form a conclusion. If you have a number of clues equal to or greater than the quest's clue target, you automatically succeed in forming an accurate conclusion. You know who done it. You know where the prince is being kept, you know who stole the diamond, etc. You may also attempt to form a conclusion with partial evidence in hand, but that approach comes with risks. You may form the wrong conclusion and the consequences for that may be dire indeed. Whenever you attempt to form a conclusion using clues for a quest involving a clue target, compare the number of clues you have in hand for that quest against that quest's clue target. So, for example, if you have 2 clues against a quest with a clue target of 6, you are at -4, because 6 minus 2 equals 4. You use the result to reference the clues and conclusions table to determine the chance of successfully forming the correct conclusion and the suggested consequences if you fail that check. So, for example, let's say that you are at -3. You have 3 clues for a quest that requires 6 clues. You will have a 35% chance you make your roll to see if you form a correct conclusion. But there will be some impossible situations. For example, maybe a quest requires 10 clues and you are at -6 or more, or less rather, then you are at a 0% chance of unraveling the mystery. So there is a small chance of solving the puzzle, the situation, the problem with just a few clues, or even a single clue, but it's not going to be easy. Now, when it comes to consequences for failed conclusions, if, however, you fail the chance of forming correct conclusions on the roll, there may be consequences, negative effects as a result of forming an inaccurate conclusion. You roll again, using instead the chance of forming false conclusions in the table. Rolling within the indicated range means that you not only fail to form the correct conclusion, but you instead form the wrong conclusion, and there may be additional consequences. Rolling outside of the indicated range means that you merely fail to make a conclusion at all. If you determine there are consequences for forming a wrong conclusion, you roll on the clues and consequences table to determine the magnitude of the impact of your wrong conclusion. In real-world terms, this represents the unintended impact of such a situation. I think you can come up with some interesting ways to handle this mechanic. Because, for example, maybe you are investigating this particular case, you arrive at the wrong conclusion, and perhaps you determine that you accuse someone of being the villain of the situation, of the quest. Then I would recommend that you fight that villain, even if you kill that villain or capture that villain or whatever. And then I would recommend that you make the roll to see the consequences of failure. And maybe the villain was not actually a villain, he was an innocent person, or perhaps even a hero, and you killed or captured that non-player character, and that could result in catastrophic consequences as determined by a table. So, for example, the exact meaning of the terms of the table is left to your interpretation in the context of the quest you are playing through. Some general guidelines are provided in this book, however. For example, catastrophic consequences are the worst possible irrevocable outcomes. An innocent person is hanged, a marriage is destroyed, someone murders the wrong person in the heat of passion, etc. Major consequences are terrible, but can be recovered from once the correct conclusion is understood and shared. An innocent person goes to jail or is exiled, for example. When it comes to moderate consequences, they are bad, but do not fundamentally affect the livelihood of innocence and generally involve suspicion, not action. So maybe the wrong person is suspected of a crime but not convicted of it. Or maybe the consequences are minor, they are trivial at best and often momentary. Brief disbelief of or incredulity towards someone else at the sheer audacity to propose something so obviously incorrect. And if you roll a 20 on the table, it turns out to all be just a simple mistake, and there are no consequences. So like I said, there are different ways you could handle things. You could follow the guidelines of the toolkit, but you can come up with some interesting ways to take the quest quite off the rails based on your chance for forming a false conclusion percentage or the consequences for failure result. Now let's talk about finding clues. Clues can crop up anywhere. When you are searching a house, when you are searching a body, or when you're bribing a priest to look the other way while you sort through records, you may decide to intentionally search for clues, or you may discover them completely by accident in the course of ordinary adventuring. So when it comes to clue searching and quests, whenever you explicitly declare your intent to search an environment for clues, you must declare the one and only quest for which you are searching for clues. Perhaps obviously you must have at least one quest active that has a clue target in order to search explicitly for clues in the first place. You may only intentionally search for clues in the context of one and only one quest at a time. However, you may search the same environment for clues in the context of more than one quest. To do so, you must perform multiple searches. But there is also a chance that you may end up finding clues for an unrelated quest, and we will talk about that in a few moments. So for example, if you are in a shrine that you feel is related to 3 active quests, each with a clue target, you may search that shrine 3 times, checking each time relative to a specific one of those quests. When it comes to methodical searches, for rules systems that allow taking 10 or taking 20 to perform skill checks or other mechanics that grant you automatic bonuses or roll values if you take a long amount of time to make a search, those options apply to searching for clues as they normally would. Risks associated with such search situations or durations also apply as normal. For example, if you are in the wilderness and would normally risk a wandering monster encounter if you take 20 on a check, doing so in the context of searching for clues would also prompt a wandering monster check. Now, when it comes to accidentally discovered clues and quests, if you discover a clue when you are explicitly searching for clues in the context of a specific quest, any clue you discover is automatically in support of that specific quest. Increment the clues found counter against that quest by 1. Anytime you discover a clue by accident, that is as a result of a roll on the clue finding by environment table that you did not explicitly call for, you must randomize the active quest it is associated with. Similarly, anytime you roll on this table and successfully discover a clue, you randomize which active quest it is associated with. So to simplify things, you have this table that determines your chance of finding clues if you are looking in a building related to the quest, a non-related building, maybe you are searching a corpse, a monster horde, a dungeon, pretty much anything. You have a chance to find a clue or to find nothing at all. But there is also a chance of finding a clue and additional clues. You also have ways to modify this table to raise the difficulty or lower it, depending on the context. And of course, if your role-playing game system of choice already has an investigation system, you can integrate that system with this quite easily, or replace it, or use both at the same time, or alternate both systems. It all depends on what you want. For example, if you want to raise the difficulty, I would combine this search mechanic of the Solo Adventuring Toolkit with your investigation system of choice. Maybe you make your roll on the Solo Adventuring Toolkit table and there is a clue, but now you also need to be successful when making your check using any investigation system or subsystem that you like to see if you actually find that clue. You could also use that system to determine false leads, like I said, or some disastrous consequences The possibilities are endless. It's all about having fun. When it comes to finding multiple clues, normally searching for a clue in a particular location will, at best, yield one clue towards any given quest. However, if you succeed greatly in your search, you may discover more than one clue. Results on the clue finding by environment table that indicate yes plus an icon means you automatically discover one clue, but there is also a chance that you may discover more than one. You roll again on the table using the same context and environment reference column, and if you receive a yes result, it means you discovered one additional clue. So now you need to randomly determine to which other quest that clue applies. The yes plus the icon result stacks in this manner. You may theoretically discover an endless number of clues if your luck holds, so it's somewhat of an exploding dice mechanic, and I think this is perfect for more complex adventures and campaigns that have several plotlines ongoing within the story. And this concludes this part of the guide and review. I really like this clue system. It helps you determine if you found something interesting or important for the quest, but it could also lead you to some unforeseen and potentially catastrophic circumstances based on some false leads or wrong outcomes. And like I said, you can combine this mechanical system with any system or subsystem of your RPG of choice. Whether you want to handle things in a fail-forward way, when you know that you are always going to be arriving at a climactic scene or resolution, but many horrible things could happen along the way if you fail those rolls. But you could also handle it a bit grittier, a bit more noir, when not all of the cases are going to be solved. Maybe you are investigating a murder or you're trying to protect someone, and if you fail to find the culprit or solve the mystery, that non-player character dies. Or you never find out who the villain is actually responsible for the crime. That could also be handled in that way. It all depends on what you like for your RPGs. Thank you for watching this part of the guide and review. In the next part, we are going to talk about searching for clues, which is a somewhat extensive subsection. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.